Well, good day, my friends. We are in Detroit, Michigan today, and we are at the Holy Cross Cemetery, and we are going to talk about one of the most fascinating stories of anyone's life I think I've ever covered. Both his reality and the myths behind his life and his supposed death. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now. What a very cool cemetery. So we're here to see Rodriguez, and he's all the way back in section S. And what I kind of love about it is he's all the way back kind of by himself. He has a very bizarre story, like I told you to start the video. Rodriguez was a local Detroit musician, songwriter, and he was incredible. His music is amazing. He only put 2 records out. In 1969 was when the first one came out. It was called Cold Fact, and he was performing around town, not really picking up much of a following or anything, but the songs were amazing, and the album was amazing. It just didn't do much. And he had kind of a fear of performing, and it was said that he would perform with his back to the audience most times. But his legend was that he made a second record, and after the second record, his record label dropped him, and he was out doing a show, and the rumor or the legend was that he took his own life on stage. One story was that he pulled a gun out and shot himself. One story was that he poured gasoline on himself and set himself on fire in front of the crowd. So he didn't have much of an American presence. However, somehow his records ended up in South Africa. There he is, the legend, Sixto Diaz Rodriguez, July 10th, 1942 to August 8th, 2023. You can tell that if he had done that story, like I told you, we would have heard about it if it was in 2023. It says, "I thank my God upon every remembrance of you." So apparently one of his records made its way to South Africa, and it was traded around, passed around, and then it was released by a record company, and it was actually censored because South Africa was going through apartheid, and they would heavily censor anything that was anti-establishment. And Sixto, actually, his lyrics were about everyday life, about class separation, and about being anti-establishment in some ways. So they would censor his records, but for 25 years, he sold tons of records in South Africa. They would even say he was bigger than Elvis Presley in South Africa, but nobody knew what happened to him. Everybody had that story that they had heard that he took his own life on stage, and just nobody really knew. So then all of a sudden in the 90s, they released his second album, which had never come out in South Africa. And they put it out, and in the liner notes it says, basically, for any music sleuths, we don't know what happened to him, we don't know the story. And so people started to look into it, and 2 separate South African men started researching, trying to find out what happened to him. And they found out that his albums had been released through a label called Sussex. So they found that the royalties through these 25 years that they'd been releasing his albums have been paid to this record company. And when they tracked down the head of the record company, he said, "I'm not getting any of that money, and anybody that says I am is going to have to show me some receipts." and basically left it at that. He said Sixto Rodriguez was one of the greatest artists he ever worked with, but said he never sold probably more than 6 records. And if they were saying that he was a cult icon in South Africa, they were going to have to prove it to him, but that his company was shut down, he wasn't getting any money, and nobody really knew what happened. So these guys are searching, and they're finding out little tidbits. They're looking through the song lyrics, and they're looking, he's mentioning different parts of the country. He's talking about big buildings, and then finally somebody notices that he mentions in a song that he says Dearborn. And when they look it up, they find out Dearborn is in Detroit. So the focus kind of is like, oh, okay, so the songs are probably about Detroit, or at least this song is, so they had something to go on. And then finally they get into contact with somebody that actually knew Rodriguez, and when they tell him everything that they have researched and how, they think that he passed away, they tell him all this story, and then they say, the one question we want to know is, how did he die? And the guy says, Rodriguez isn't dead. He's very much alive, and he's living in Detroit. And they put this feeler out. They put a post online saying, like, we want to find him. We want to meet him. We want to talk to him. And Rodriguez's daughter replies to the email, or through email, and says, I'm his daughter, and he's alive, but sometimes the myths can be disappointing. Are you sure you want to know the truth? And so they said, yes, we do. And they talked to one of the guys that was researching. The 2 guys separately had kind of pulled their information and started doing it together. They talked to his daughter, and she says, kind of fills them in with what Rodriguez's life has been like for 25 years, and says, my father's fine, he's in Detroit. And the guy on the other end said, can I talk to him? That's all I want. I would love to talk to him. And the guy said at 1 a.m. his phone rang, and the voice on the other end was Sixto Rodriguez. So this incredible songwriter, his story was basically that he had quit writing songs when his second album was a flop, and he just went on with life. He was actually working hard labor for 25 years doing demolition on construction sites. And he raised his 2 daughters, and they said he would take them to, political things or fundraisers or things that he believed in. And then eventually ended up running for city council and running for the mayor of Detroit, which he did not win, but was just a humble guy. She said for his whole life, that's all he was doing. He was just a humble guy living simply. And they said, your father here in South Africa is gigantic. He is a megastar, bigger than the Rolling Stones, bigger than Elvis. We got to get him here. So they talked to Rodriguez on the phone, and within a few days, apparently he was in South Africa. And the man who was researching, trying to find him and do all of this, his band ended up getting to open for Rodriguez at Rodriguez's very first show in South Africa for the crowd. And they realized that Rodriguez didn't have a band, so they became his backup band as well. So the truth was that for 25 years, Rodriguez was basically living a very simple, meager life, getting by, doing jobs that he said his daughters would say nobody else wanted. He would do those kind of things and not be bothered by it. All that time, none of the money came his way for the record sales in South Africa. In fact, when he started performing, when they kind of changed his life, he started performing in South Africa pretty regularly, selling out concerts to huge crowds, like 20,000 people. He would never keep the money. He would always donate it to a cause, and for the rest of his life, he lived very simply. He would go out and tour in America, because I got to see him open in the Hollywood Bowl for Brian Wilson. I believe Brian Wilson was doing the Smile Tour with the orchestra, and I got to see Sixto Rodriguez live. Now, they made an amazing documentary about this whole situation. It's called Searching for Sugarman, and that was based off of one of his songs. If you've never heard his music, go anywhere you can and listen to Rodriguez. He just goes by one name, but the music is amazing. His voice kind of has a Arlo Guthrie feel to it to me, but the lyrics are amazing. The music is amazing. I love all of it. I Think of You is one of my favorite songs, but all of it's amazing. And it's so cool that, I mean, it's crazy, but he got his fame 30 years after the fact. He got his acknowledgement, and the weird thing is he never let it change him. Even though he would go do those shows in South Africa and tour around the US and tour, you know, basically for the rest of his life, when he wasn't touring, he was back on job sites doing hard labor, busting up bathrooms and helping to, you know, refurbish homes. And he would tell the people on the job site about his fame in South Africa, and they're like, no way. And then he would show them pictures of him performing in front of sold out crowds. So it's amazing to see somebody who was so talented finally, you know, get their dues later in life. And he just seemed like such a good guy from everything you can find about him online. God rest your soul, Rodriguez. I'm so glad I was able to come out and visit you. When he was alive, I did try and track him down because I wanted to do a video with him, kind of interview him, but it was just never able to happen. In the documentary, they show him walking home from work, and I'm going to show you where he was walking to, where he lived then. So this is the house in the documentary. We see him walking up here and going into that entrance. It's changed a little bit since then. When he lived here, it didn't have the stairwell over here. It was just this one, and it didn't have the balcony railing or anything up there. This was his house. Pretty modest place. Big place, but not sure how many people would have lived here, if it was an apartment or what, but looks like it has several entrances now. So this apartment building with the giant mural was where he lived. Pretty bad neighborhood, but the mural is to him. It says, "Won't you bring back all those colors to my dreams? Sixto Rodriguez." And then an image of him over at the end. So this is the other side of the building, and you can see right there that window's completely busted out. This would have been the entrance where he would have went in. I know this was a former residence, but I don't know if this was the residence he lived in till his death, after his life changed and everything, when he found out he was a star in South Africa. Looks like they're obviously going to build something on the lot next to it, but I'm not sure what, and I hope they don't cover up his mural. But yeah, this was one of the places he lived in when he was doing hard labor, demolition on construction sites. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. Rest in peace, Rodriguez.